In 1981, Singapore opened a single terminal in Changi. It was small, simple, and just one more stop on the map of Asia. But by 2025, that little terminal had grown into the world's most awarded airport, a place travelers call a destination all by itself. Meanwhile, its neighbor, KLIA in Malaysia, kept chasing. By 2024, KLIA carried about 57 million passengers, but Changi, it could already handle 90 million a year, and it isn't stopping. A giant Terminal 5 is under construction, adding space for another 50 million travelers by the 2030s. The gap keeps widening. But this story isn't just about numbers. For travelers, the difference is emotional. Step into Changi, and it feels like a luxury city, with waterfalls, butterfly gardens, and spaces that blur travel and wonder. Step into KLIA, and it feels more like a stopover, still trying to catch up. So here's the real question. Can KLIA ever close the gap? Or has Changi already secured the crown of Southeast Asia's skies forever? In the next few minutes, you'll see how history, design, technology, and future plans reveal why Changi beats KLIA every single time. This is the hidden truth of Changi's dominance, and the secret reason KLIA may never catch up. Every race begins with a first step. For airports in Southeast Asia, that step came in 1981, when Singapore opened Changi Airport. At the time, it was just one terminal, but it was already designed with clarity of vision. Built not just as a transport hub, but as a gateway to the world. 17 years later, in 1998, Malaysia opened the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA. By then, Changi had already matured, expanded, and proven itself. 17 years may not sound like much, but in aviation, it is a lifetime. In those years, Changi had developed passenger flows, global airline partnerships, and a reputation for efficiency. It was winning awards before KLIA even opened its doors. This was the first fact bomb. That head start gave Singapore an enormous advantage. KLIA did not begin as a leader. It began as a challenger. And though it was born with ambition, a sleek design, plenty of land, and the dream of becoming a hub, it was already late to the race. By the time KLIA welcomed its first passengers, Changi was not just an airport. It was a benchmark, a model that other airports studied, and so KLIA faced an uphill climb. No matter how modern it was at launch, it was running against a rival with nearly 2 decades of momentum. The emotional weight was heavy. Malaysia's Pride project entered the world stage full of promise. But from day one, it was already chasing. The key question became simple. How would Changi use this head start so powerfully that even today, KLIA still hasn't closed the gap? The answer lies in the terminal race. From the beginning, Changi grew in careful, measured waves. In 1990, it added Terminal 2, doubling its space while keeping the same clean design. By 2008, Terminal 3 opened, with soaring glass walls, lush gardens, and new technology to speed passengers through. And in 2017, Terminal 4 arrived, modern, compact, and built around automation. Each expansion was more than just square meters. Every new terminal was designed as a seamless extension of the old. Passenger flow stayed smooth. Airline operations stayed unified. And Changi kept one identity, a single airport that kept getting bigger, smarter, and more efficient. Now compare this with KLIA. Opened in 1998, it did not add another terminal until 2014, when KLIA 2 was built for low-cost carriers. It was massive, shiny, and ambitious. But there was a problem. Instead of uniting operations, KLIA split them. Full-service airlines stayed in the main terminal. Budget airlines shifted to KLIA 2, across runways and taxiways. This created a divide. Transfers became harder, connections took longer, and the airport lost some of the smoothness that makes true hubs thrive. Here lies the mini-twist. While Changi grew like a single living system, KLIA's growth pulled itself apart. Passengers felt the difference. One airport felt whole, the other felt split in two. But at the end of the day, terminals are still just walls and gates. The real story lies not in buildings, but in the experience inside them. And that is where Changi pulled even further ahead. By the late 2010s, Changi was already a leader. But in 2019, it unveiled something that no airport in the world could rival. It opened Jewel Changi Airport. At its heart stood the world's tallest indoor waterfall, a shimmering column of water plunging through a glass dome. Surrounded by gardens, walking trails and shops, it looked less like an airport and more like a futuristic city. For travelers, this changed everything. Changi was no longer just a place to connect flights. It became a place worth visiting on its own. Families planned layovers in Singapore simply to spend time at Jewel. Tourists arrived early, not to queue at security, but to explore the forests and watch the waterfall glow at night. The emotional impact was huge. Changi turned transit into destination. It sold not just efficiency, but wonder. Now compare this with KLIA. Modern, large and functional. Yes, but it never built a global landmark to match Jewel. No gardens under a glass roof. No icon that made headlines around the world. KLIA stayed practical, while Changi became legendary. And this difference cut deep. Because airports are not only judged by flights and numbers, they are judged by how they make people feel. Changi made travelers feel inspired. KLIA made them feel like they were simply passing through. That emotional divide widened the gap even more. Yet beauty alone does not decide the crown. Airports live and die by the numbers, by who moves more passengers across their gates. And in that race, the contrast grows sharper still. Airports are judged not only by beauty, but by numbers. And here too, Changi pulled ahead. In 2024, Singapore's airport welcomed 67.7 million passengers. By 2025, it was already climbing back toward pre-pandemic highs. The important fact, Changi had restored its full capacity, able to handle 90 million travelers a year. This meant the airport was not just surviving, it was ready to surge. KLIA in the same year reached 57.1 million passengers. A strong recovery, yes, but still behind. And the gap was not only in traffic, it was in ambition. Changi was already looking far beyond the present. Its expansions were complete. Its systems were polished. It had space, technology, and flow ready for millions more. Meanwhile, KLIA was still playing catch-up. Projects moved slower. Upgrades came in smaller pieces. Even KLIA 2, meant to bring low-cost carriers together, had divided operations instead of uniting them. So while KLIA worked to patch weaknesses, Changi was already preparing for the next wave of growth. This created progressive tension, because airports are like runners. One trains with long strides into the future. The other jogs to fix its shoes while running the race. Every year that passed, Changi widened the distance. For Southeast Asia, the math was clear. One airport was leading, the other was trying to hold pace. And the real question grew sharper. In the next decade, who is preparing better for the travelers of tomorrow? Changi or KLIA. And here, the race between Changi and KLIA looks more uneven than ever. Singapore is already building. The crown jewel of its next chapter is Terminal 5, a mega project designed to add space for another 50 million passengers. Construction is underway, with completion aimed for the mid-2030s. When it opens, Changi's total capacity could rise toward 140 million travelers a year. That number would make it one of the largest airports on Earth. Meanwhile, in late 2024, KLIA finally announced plans to double the capacity of its Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. On paper, it sounds bold. Singapore is already building, while Malaysia is still planning. Blueprints, studies, and proposals take time, years of time, and in aviation, every year, lost means millions of passengers gained by rivals. This is the harsh reality of the expansion war. Changi builds first, then reaps the benefits. KLIA talks, then struggles to catch up. For travelers, the difference is obvious. Changi will soon feel even more like a global hub. KLIA risks feeling like it is forever behind, an airport that promises growth but delivers later. The emotional divide grows sharper, one airport charging ahead, the other hesitating on the starting line. But expansion is not only about size. An airport can be massive and still inefficient. The real edge comes from the tools hidden beneath the surface. Which airport is shaping the technology that will guide passengers into the future? Airports are more than gates and runways. They are machines of technology. And in this race, Changi has pulled far ahead. In 2024, Singapore unveiled a system that sounded like science fiction. For many passengers, there were no more paper tickets, no more passport stamps. Instead, biometric clearance became the new normal. A single face scan worked as your boarding pass, passport, and identity check. From check-in to immigration to boarding, the system recognized you instantly. It was smooth, fast, and almost invisible. This was Changi's new edge, an airport where technology removed the friction of travel. Now compare this with KLIA. By 2025, Malaysia's big focus was still on fixing its aero train system, which had been down for long stretches. Passengers queued for buses. Delays piled up. The contrast was painful. At Changi, your face was your ticket. At KLIA, you stood in line, waiting for a ride between terminals. These differences are more than inconveniences. They change how travelers remember an airport. One feels futuristic, ready for tomorrow. The other feels stuck, repairing yesterday's systems. This is the heart of Changi's tech edge. It doesn't just expand space, it transforms the experience inside that space. And travelers notice, because when you ask passengers which airport they trust, praise, and even love, their answers tell the story more clearly than numbers ever could. Numbers tell one story, but rankings tell another. And here, the gap between Changi and KLIA feels like two very different worlds. In 2025, Skytrax, the most famous name in aviation reviews, gave Changi the crown once again. It was named the world's best airport. For travelers, this was no surprise. From gardens to waterfalls to seamless tech, Changi had become not just efficient, but iconic. It was the kind of airport people posted about, praised online, and remembered long after their flights. KLIA, meanwhile, found recognition of a different kind. In 2024, it was ranked the #1 low-cost mega-hub by OAG. This meant it had become the busiest airport in the world for budget airline connections. On paper, this was impressive. It showed KLIA's strength as a hub for AirAsia and other low-cost carriers. But the contrast was sharp. Changi's crown was about prestige, a global symbol of excellence. KLIA's crown was about volume, moving millions of passengers cheaply. Two victories, yes, but victories of very different value. One shaped how the world admired Singapore. The other underlined Malaysia's role as a stopover for budget flyers. This is the progressive tension between them. KLIA succeeds in scale, but Changi wins in status. And in aviation, status attracts premium airlines, wealthier travelers, and global influence. That is why Changi's position always feels higher. The question is no longer who wins awards. It is why Changi always seems to stay ahead. What deeper reason explains its ability to outshine year after year? Every rivalry has a hidden card. For Changi, that card was played in 2009. That year, Singapore restructured how its airport was run. The government created the Changi Airport Group, CAG, separating the regulator from the operator. This meant one body set the rules, while another focused on running the airport like a world-class business. Suddenly, Changi could act with speed. It could reinvest profits directly into expansion, gardens, and new technology. It could chase partnerships and commercial ideas the way a private company does, without waiting for long government chains of approval. This was the real fact bomb. Changi was not just efficient because of design. It was efficient because of governance. KLIA, on the other hand, remained state-heavy. Ownership and decision-making stayed tied closely to ministries and government-linked companies. That made bold moves slower. Approvals dragged, ambitions often tangled in bureaucracy. So while Changi planned the Jewel or Terminal 5 with private-style freedom, KLIA had to negotiate layers of state involvement before projects could move forward. The difference is not only in passengers, terminals, or waterfalls. It is in how each airport is allowed to think. One runs like a global business. The other still feels like a government department. And that difference explains why Changi's lead has lasted so long. But behind all these details lies the final, hidden truth. The deeper reason Changi continues to dominate. The truth of Changi's dominance is not about size alone. It is not only about glass domes, gardens, or waterfalls. The secret is planning decades ahead. Changi does not wait for problems to appear. It builds answers before the questions are even asked. This is where KLIA struggles. Malaysia reacts, Singapore anticipates. When KLIA thinks about fixing old systems, Changi is already unveiling the next breakthrough. When KLIA talks about expansion, Changi is already building its next terminal. This is the twist. Vision beats ambition, always. And that is why Changi keeps pulling further ahead. The emotional high point is clear. Picture the Jewel glowing at night, lights spilling across the rainforest dome, biometric gates opening without a passport, passengers flowing like water through halls that feel more like a city than an airport. It is efficiency, wonder, and future thinking woven together. The crown of Asian skies belongs to Singapore, and KLIA, it still chases, promising bold projects, but always a step behind. The question now is simple. Can KLIA ever catch up? Or has Changi already locked the future of Southeast Asia's airways? Two airports, one rivalry, but only one turned travel into an art. From a single terminal in 1981 to the glowing Jewel in 2019, Changi rewrote what an airport could be. KLIA entered the race with pride and ambition. But step by step, Singapore widened the gap. We trace the story: history, terminals, numbers, technology, rankings, and finally, the hidden truth of why one airport leads while the other chases. Changi showed that vision, not size, crowns the skies. And that is why its name echoes around the world. If you want more deep dives into the world's greatest icons and rivalries, subscribe now. And tell us, if you could fly tomorrow, would it be through Changi or KLIA? Your answer writes the next chapter.